Step into the shadows with us. Here at Paranormal M, we bring you stories that'll make your hair stand on end. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications and stay up to date with our latest bone-chilling tales. We hope you have a frightfully good time listening. I've spent my entire life in the serene and picturesque landscapes of North Carolina. Our little abode nestled between neighboring houses, a sprawling pasture of majestic horses to the left, and a dense forest at the back. It was the year 2015 or maybe 16, and the holiday season had painted the world with a snowy blanket as Christmas approached. At the tender age of 11 or 12, I stepped outside, accompanied by my faithful canine companion, to explore the beginning of the woods. The snowflakes fell gracefully around me, creating a whimsical ambiance that mirrored the festive spirit. As I ventured further, something peculiar caught my attention. A faint melody echoing through the trees, reminiscent of wind chimes or a delicate music box. My heart skipped a beat and a shiver ran down my spine. Instinctively, I hurriedly ushered my dog back to the safety of our cozy home, afraid of the unfamiliar sounds that seemed to emerge from the heart of the woods. Later, when I mustered the courage to recount my encounter with my uncle and grandmother, they greeted my tale with skepticism. Their doubtful expressions conveyed their disbelief, leaving me somewhat disheartened. Little did they know that reports of clowns luring children into the woods had been circulating in the news, causing widespread panic in South Carolina during the same period. I had hoped that these news stories might lend some credibility to my experience and alleviate their skepticism. Alas, my plea fell on deaf ears as they remained unconvinced. My uncle, however, mentioned the existence of an old house situated across our property line, speculating that the haunting music might have originated from there. But deep down, I knew that it wasn't this kind of melody, and I couldn't make him understand. Time whisked me away, and now it's December 3rd, 2021. The holiday season once again graced us with its presence. I'm now 17, and the passing years have brought both change and loss. Sadly, my uncle had departed this world, leaving behind cherished memories and a void in our heart. In the wake of his passing, my mother and stepfather decided to relocate, and we now reside in the very house that borders the enigmatic woods. Although the snowflakes have not yet started their graceful descent from the heavens, I've yet to summon the courage to revisit that mysterious place. Consequently, the haunting melodies have eluded my ears, for I have chosen to shield myself from the unknown. Recently, however, my curiosity is being rekindled. On a quiet evening, I was startled by the sound of faint knocks and footsteps outside, their cadence separated by approximately an hour. Intrigued and compelled by the inexplicable force, I embarked on a quest to uncover the truth behind my childhood encounter. As I delved into research, I discovered a multitude of accounts similar to mine. People recounting their experiences with haunted melodies, within similar settings and during the same period of time. It was as if a vast chorus of shared mysteries echoed through the annals of time. Now as the winter season beckons, and if the heavens grace us with the glistening blanket of snow, I've made up my mind. I will venture into the woods once more, accompanied by my loyal four-legged friend. With bated breath, I anticipate the return of those ethereal melodies that have haunted my memories for so long. Perhaps this time, armed with the knowledge of countless others who have heard the same enigmatic tunes, I'll finally unravel the secrets that lie hidden in the veiled depths of the woods. Some weird stuff has been going on at my house. I've never experienced anything super paranormal in my life, except for a few strange occurrences when I was a kid. The first incident happened when I was 6 years old and playing on my PlayStation 2 before school. Suddenly my vision flashed bright green, which freaked me out at the time. However, this has not happened since, so I've always wondered what it was. Another time, my sister and I were playing in the basement, and after we went upstairs and came back down, we found the sombrero we had been sitting on the ground flipped over. Moreover, when we went to move it, one of her electric Barbie dolls in the corner of the basement randomly started talking. This was a little creepy, but we brushed it off as a coincidence. Apart from these incidents, I've always been fascinated by the paranormal thanks to my dad and his relatives. They all grew up in a house that they claimed was haunted. Their dogs would bark at the ceiling for no reason. His toys would shuffle around as a kid. Everyone he grew up with could occasionally hear their names called when no one was home. Faucets would randomly turn on, and double doors would randomly swing open. According to my dad, the previous owners of the house had a 4-year-old girl that died running out into the street in front of the house. My dad had some pretty crazy things happen to him over the years, and his great-grandmother told him that he had a guardian angel when he was a child. Due to all these stories, I've always been extremely fascinated with paranormal things. I could keep mentioning things, but let me explain what's been happening at our house lately. I moved into the basement at the start of 2020, and ever since, some strange things have been happening. The moment I finished moving all my things into the room, I had a really weird gut feeling that I'd never experienced before. Lights started flickering in my room, and sometimes my room would get extremely cold out of nowhere. I have a laptop in my room, and it runs really hot. It's pretty much on all the time, so this shouldn't happen. Plus, the furnace is in my room behind a closed door, so this really shouldn't happen. Something else started happening like a week ago. I'll go to open a door, like the bathroom or when I go to turn the knob. It won't budge as if it's locked, but I'll give it a few minutes, and it opens with zero issues. Another time I was home alone with my dogs. Both of them were in my sight, and I heard a door slam shut in the basement. Sure enough, our storage room door that's right outside my room that I leave open was closed when I go back to check it. But here's the kicker. My dad has some sort of sixth sense. He can almost feel paranormal things. A few years ago, we used to visit our family friends often, and at some point, faucets started running in the middle of the night. Things would move around and doors would lock behind people after entering rooms. My mom wanted to test if my dad was sensing things correctly or not. So we all went over to their house one day, and my mom didn't mention a thing to my dad about what's been going on in their house. After being there for about 40 minutes, my dad pulled my mom into the garage and told her that he really had a bad feeling about the house and he wanted to leave. This was proof to us that my dad's sixth sense was real. So when I started experiencing strange things in the basement, I immediately called my dad to come over and check it out. He took a walk around the basement and immediately noticed something strange. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he said that he felt a presence in the room that he couldn't explain. Over the next few weeks, my dad would come over to the house every so often and check in on me and see if anything else had happened. He would often bring his spiritual tools with him, such as sage and crystals, to help cleanse the house of any negative energy. My dad would go around the basement with his sage, wafting the smoke in every nook and cranny to clear out any bad spirits. He would also leave crystals around the room to absorb any negative energy that might be present. Despite all this, I continued to experience strange occurrences in my basement. One night while I was laying in bed, I heard a loud bang come from the other side of the room. When I got up to investigate, I found that a picture frame had fallen off the wall for no apparent reason. Another time, I woke up in the middle of the night to see a dark figure standing at the end of my bed. I couldn't make out any features, but the figure just stood there watching me. At this point, I was getting really scared. I didn't know what was happening in my basement, and I didn't know how to make it stop. I called my dad again, and this time he brought in a psychic medium to help us figure out what was going on. The medium was able to connect with the spirit that was haunting my basement, and she told us that it was a ghost of a young girl who had died in the house years ago. The medium was able to communicate with the girl's spirit and help her move on to the other side. After that, everything in my basement went back to normal. The lights stopped flickering and the room no longer felt cold, and I never heard any more strange noises either. I was finally able to sleep soundly at night without worrying about what might happen in the basement. In conclusion, my experiences with the paranormal have been scary and fascinating. From the strange occurrences in my childhood to the unexplainable things in my own basement, I've always been intrigued by the idea of the supernatural. Thanks to my dad's sixth sense and the help of a psychic medium, I was able to put my fears to rest and finally get some peace of mind. An entity called me my newborn baby. Late afternoon a couple of days ago, I found myself in the familiar routine of putting my precious 2-week-old baby to sleep. The exhaustion from sleepless night of tending to her every need and the numerous household chores I had tackled that morning had finally caught up with me. Seizing the opportunity, I decided to steal a few moments of rest while my husband made a quick grocery run. Before settling down, I made a point of grabbing the trusty baby monitor. You see, I've been plagued with not one, but 2 sleeping disorders, making me an incredibly deep sleeper. Unfortunately, this sometimes results in me missing my daughter's cries for attention during the night. Hence, the baby monitor had become an indispensable tool, allowing me to hear her every whimper, even from a distance. With the monitor in hand, I retreated to our bedroom just across the hallway, intending to catch up on some much-needed sleep after reading for a while. As I reclined on my bed engrossed in my book, a sudden onslaught of static crackled through the baby monitor, jolting me from my literary escape. Momentarily perplexed, I hesitated before deciding to shrug it off. After all, Natalia wasn't crying, so I assumed the noise was a minor glitch that I could safely ignore. But then a child's voice, almost imperceptibly whispering through the baby monitor, calling my name, Amanda, Amanda. The blood in my veins turned ice cold as I registered the eerie sounds reverberating through the air. Did I truly just hear a child's voice beckon me through the baby monitor? An inexplicable unease engulfed me, as if an unseen presence was closely observing my every move. Frightened, I tried to dismiss the unsettling encounter, willing myself to believe it was mere imagination. However, my efforts to rationalize the situation were quickly shattered. The room fell silent once more, momentarily masking my trepidation. But just as the thought of the ordeal had passed, the static noise resumed, followed by that same spine-chilling voice, and this time imploring me, "Come here." My heart pounded furiously against my chest, adrenaline surging through my veins, urging me to confront the inexplicable phenomenon that had unfolded within the confines of my daughter's room. Summoning all my courage, I mustered the strength to cross the hallway and I entered her room, where I found her serenely nestled in her bassinet, her eyes wide open, seemingly anticipating my arrival. The sight sent shivers down my spine. Was it possible that my baby was somehow communicating with me through the monitor? Given my sleep disorders, perhaps this was her way of signaling her needs before I succumbed to slumber. Or could there be an otherworldly presence lurking in the shadows, attempting to establish contact? While I had never encountered any malevolent spirits within the walls of her home before, the disconcerting experience left me on edge. Thoughts raced through my mind, speculating the nature of the unseen forces that had been at play in the fateful day. Despite the lingering apprehension, I found solace in the fact that further incidents had occurred since then, alleviating some of my initial fears. As the days passed, life settled back into a semblance of normalcy. I continued to care for Natalia diligently, ensuring her every need was met. Yet a part of me couldn't shake the residual sense of mystery that surrounded that baffling incident. I found myself contemplating the boundaries between the realms we perceive and those we don't, questioning the inexplicable phenomenon that occasionally weave themselves into our lives. Whatever the true nature of that encounter was, whether it was mere coincidence or something more extraordinary, I couldn't deny the impact it had on me. It made me acutely aware of the fragility of our reality, the thin veil that separates the tangible from the intangible, the known from the unknown. In the days that followed, I found myself delving deeper into the realms of the paranormal and the unexplained. I devoured books on supernatural occurrences and haunted houses, and the mysteries of the human mind. I sought solace in online forums where individuals shared their own encounters with the inexplicable, finding comfort in the knowledge that I wasn't alone in my curiosity or trepidation. As I immersed myself in this newfound fascination, I discovered that many people had experienced similar incidents with baby monitors and other electronic devices. Some attributed it to interference from neighboring devices, while others believed it to be a form of communication with entities beyond our comprehension. The stories ranged from heartwarming accounts of deceased loved ones watching over their families, to chilling tales of malevolent spirits seeking to cause harm. I decided to take the proactive approach to better understand the peculiar incident I had experienced. I consulted with experts in the field of paranormal research and reached out to mediums and psychics who claimed to possess a heightened sensitivity to supernatural energies. Each encounter provided a different perspective, leaving me both enlightened and perplexed. One psychic suggested that my baby's innocence and purity might have acted as a conduit, allowing her to bridge the gap between our world and the spiritual realm. Another theorized that it could have been a residual energy imprint, a faint echo from a previous inhabitant of our home. Skeptics, on the other hand, dismissed it as nothing more than random electronic interference. Regardless of the various explanations, one thing remained certain. I had experienced something out of the ordinary. It was a brush with the mysterious and the unexplained, a glimpse into a reality beyond our own comprehension. And while I may never have maybe all the answers from this, I embraced the sense of wonder and curiosity accompanied with such occurrences. As time went on, Natalia grew older, and the incident with the baby monitor became a distant memory. Life settled into harmonious rhythm, filled with joy and challenges of raising a child. Yet the experience left an indelible mark on my psyche, a reminder that our world is vast and complex, holding secrets that may forever elude our grasp. In the end, perhaps the purpose of that eerie encounter was not for me to unravel its intricacies or find concrete explanations, and instead, it served as a humbling reminder of the mysteries that lie just beyond the boundaries of our understanding, urging me to embrace the enigmatic nature of life itself. And so I continued my journey, forever captivated by the extraordinary and unknown, forever open to the possibility that there's much more to our existence than meets the eye. Small rural town that resonated really badly with me. When I reflect upon my adventurous youth, one particular memory stands out vividly in my mind. It was a time when I was a carefree 18-year-old, embarking on a thrilling bushwalking road trip with my beloved father through the vast and awe-inspiring landscape of New South Wales outback. Little did I know that this expedition would lead me to a peculiar encounter with an inexplicable sense of foreboding. The purpose of my journey was to rendezvous with my older brother, who was 21 at the time, and a mutual friend in a quaint rural town. Our mission was to engage with vermin, shooting on a massive outback property, utilizing various firearms such as .22s and .243s and a trusty shotgun. As an individual who had been part of an Army Reserve for over a year and an active member of the Scout movement for more than 5 years, I possessed a wealth of experience in navigating through remote and desolate regions. The Australian bush had become my sanctuary, and I reveled in the solitude that it offered. After bidding farewell to my father, who had kindly dropped me off at my friend's house, my brother arrived, and we eagerly piled into my friend's car, eagerly setting off in the outback just as the sun began its descent below the horizon. As darkness enveloped us, we embarked on a journey into the unknown, guided only by our sense of adventure and the thrill of the hunt. Hours passed, and the unyielding outback landscape eventually surrendered to our determination, granting us access to our chosen destination. Stepping out into the darkness, our senses heightened by the anticipation of the upcoming expedition, we ventured forth into the wilderness. The rugged terrain, illuminated only by the pale glow of the moon, presented us with a formidable yet exhilarating challenge. Undeterred, we established a rudimentary campsite, ensuring our basic needs were met before sleep claimed us in its gentle embrace. The following morning, the golden rays of the sun pierced through the vast expanse of the outback, rousing us from our slumber. As the world around us awakened, we prepared ourselves for yet another night of shooting under the starlit sky. It was during our third night that we decided to curtail our excursion, returning to our camp after only a few hours. Remarkably, throughout our entire 2-day sojourn, we encountered no other human soul. The isolation, far from unsettling us, merely amplified the allure of the untamed wilderness that we had come to cherish. It's crucial to emphasize the remoteness of our adventure because what transpired next had no connection to the desolate surroundings that had become my sanctuary. On our final morning, after dismantling our camp with a sense of fulfillment, our friend proposed a visit to a nearby small town, known for its natural hot spring pool, an enticing prospect that we readily embraced. However, as we embarked on the journey toward the town, an eerie sensation washed over me, causing a cascade of goosebumps to crawl up my arms and an inexplicable shiver to run down my spine. The air seemed to emit a subtle yet persistent hissing or buzzing sound, enveloping me in an oppressive aura that I struggled to even comprehend. At first, I dismissed this peculiar phenomenon as a fleeting momentary sensation, assuming it would dissipate as abruptly as it had appeared. However, much to my bewilderment, the disconcerting feeling persisted, growing in intensity with each passing moment. It became an overwhelming force, dominating my senses and rendering me immobile with discomfort. At first, I dismissed this peculiar in the car and swiftly plunged into the inviting embrace of the natural hot spring. I found myself incapable of partaking in their joviality. For the next 20 or 30 minutes, I remained inside the car, gripped by an indescribable malaise that threatened to engulf me entirely. Waves of nausea washed over me, a sensation I rarely experienced and never accompanied by actual vomiting before. Despite my growing distress, I struggled to articulate my feelings to my companions, unsure of how to express the intensity of the emotions coursing through my veins. As my brother and friend frolicked in the soothing waters of the hot spring, oblivious to my internal turmoil, I grappled with an overwhelming sense of unease. The town, once quaint and inviting, now felt suffocating and ominous, its very essence seemingly at odds with my own being. It was as though I had stumbled upon a place that vibrated in a different frequency, one that clashed discordantly with my own resonance. Eventually, unable to bear the weight of the discomfort any longer, I mustered the courage to join my companions in the hot spring. The moment my body immersed itself in the warm, therapeutic waters, a semblance of relief washed over me, momentarily soothing the tension that had plagued me. However, beneath the surface, a lingering confusion and a nagging feeling of peculiarity remained. We reluctantly bid farewell to the hot spring and the enigmatic town, retracing our steps back along the path that we had come. With each passing mile, the oppressive atmosphere gradually subsided, replaced with a semblance of normalcy. It took some time for me to fully relax, to allow the strange encounter to fade into the recesses of my memory, but the impact of that inexplicable dread continued to resonate within me for hours to come. Years later, as I reminisced with my brother about our escapades in the outback, the memory of that small town and its unsettling effects surfaced once more. To my surprise, my brother's recollection of the visit was hazy at best, his memory primarily centered on the camping and hiking portions of our journey. It became clear that the town had left an indelible mark on me alone, an inexplicable encounter that had defied explanation or rationality. Although I've never ventured back to this enigmatic small town, it frequently occupies my thoughts. I find myself pondering whether a return visit would evoke the same profound reaction within me, or if the passage of time has softened its impact. Perhaps it was merely a confluence of circumstances, an inexplicable clash between my own energetic frequency and that of the town itself. Nevertheless, the memory serves as a reminder that even the vastness of the Australian outback, there are pockets of existence that can defy our understanding and leave an indelible imprint on our souls. Strange energy in backyard after a huge tree was cut down. A few days before Christmas, my peaceful house in Southern California was struck by an unexpected incident that left an indelible mark on my memory. A colossal tree, towering over a staggering height of more than 100 feet, came crashing down onto my humble home. Its descent, precipitated by an unusually heavy rainfall, albeit Southern California standards. Fortunately, the damages inflicted upon the roof were minimal, nothing more than a few superficial wounds that could be easily remedied. Miraculously, no one suffered any injuries from the calamitous event. A fortuitous outcome filled my heart with immense gratitude. In the wake of this natural disaster, the following morning witnessed the arrival of a team of proficient tree trimmers, summoned to the scene to ameliorate the chaos that had unfolded. With their unwavering expertise, they diligently commenced the arduous task of slicing the colossal tree into more manageable sections, ensuring its eventual removal from my premises. Once their laborious effort had come to fruition, all that remained was a melancholic reminder of the once majestic arboreal titan, a humble stump, steadfastly marking the spot where nature's wrath had made its presence felt. However, what transpired next took an eerie turn, as though an inexplicable darkness had descended upon the remnants of the fallen tree. Merely a day later, the lush foliage of ivy that had previously adorned the tree's base underwent a grotesque transformation, its verdant leaves transmuting into a somber shade of black. The juxtaposition between life and death, vibrant greenery and desolate void, became starkly apparent in the hauntingly altered scenery that now enveloped the remnants of the arboreal wreckage. Curiously, this peculiar phenomenon coincided with my daily ritual of waking my beloved canine companion along a designated route, adjacent to the fallen tree. Each day, as my faithful companion embarked on her biological duties, pooping, an unsettling transformation unfolded within her demeanor. The memory we drew near the truncated remains of the fallen giant, a foreboding shift would manifest itself within her. Her once lively tail would retreat, tucked between her hind legs, while her gaze darted anxiously over her shoulder, as if an unseen specter was lurking in the shadows. Desperately, she sought to retreat, urging me back towards the sanctity of our abode, with an unwavering determination at that. The intensity of her agitation and fear was unparalleled, her distressed state tugging at my heartstrings, leaving me bewildered and concerned. As fate would have it, a visit from a dear friend, on the precipice of embarking upon her college journey, would offer a twist of serendipity to this enigmatic tale. Unbeknownst to her, I'd been grappling with the perplexing situation concerning my four-legged companion and this peculiar occurrence surrounding the felled tree. In a remarkable display of intuition, before I could even begin to voice my concerns, she turned to me with an almost prophetic declaration, proclaiming the presence of an unusual and mystifying energy permeating the vicinity behind my house. Astonished by her preternatural insight, I eagerly divulged the peculiar behavior exhibited by my dog near the remnants of the felled arboreal giant. Intrigued by the convergence of these inexplicable phenomena, my friend, displaying an unwavering resolve, beseeched me to accompany her on a venture behind the house. In the vicinity of the tree that had so deeply unsettled my dog, reluctantly yet propelled by an undeniable curiosity, I obliged, allowing the impending exploration to unfold. Guided by our collective trepidation, we traversed the path leading us closer to the haunting spectacle that lay ahead, a mere shadow of the once majestic tree. As we approached the solemn stump, a palpable sense of anticipation enveloped us. The air seemed to thicken with an otherworldly aura, as if we were stepping into a realm where the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural blurred. My friend's eyes widened, her gaze fixed on the eerie scene before us, and then it happened. A subtle gust of wind whispered through the barren branches, carrying with it a mournful sigh that echoed through the quietude of the surroundings. Goosebumps prickled my skin, and I couldn't help but shiver involuntarily, It was as if the spirit of the fallen tree lingered, a residual energy intertwined with the very essence of the place. I turned my attention to my faithful companion, who stood by my side, her body trembling in an almost synchronistic rhythm with the unsettling forces at play. Her eyes, usually brimming with curiosity and joy, now reflected a mixture of fear and bewilderment. It was as if she could perceive something beyond the realm of human comprehension, a realm inhabited by ethereal beings and ancient secrets. Intrigued by the inexplicable circumstances surrounding us, I allowed my senses to heighten, absorbing every detail that unfolded. The atmosphere crackled with an intangible electricity, as if unseen eyes were watching our every move. Shadows danced and contorted, casting elongated figures upon the earth, reminiscent of restless spirits yearning to be set free. My friend, blessed with an unwavering courage, approached the stump with cautious steps, her fingertips grazing the rough surface as if seeking a connection to the mysterious energy that permeated the area. And then a profound revelation struck her, etching a look of realization upon her countenance. "It's not just the fallen tree," she whispered, her voice barely audible amidst the enigmatic surroundings. "It's the energy that dwells within the remnants. It holds a story untold, a tale of resilience and ancient wisdom." Her words resonated deeply within me, igniting a fervent curiosity to uncover the secret hidden messages within the fallen giant's vestiges. Together we delved into the realm of the unknown, driven by an insatiable hunger for the knowledge and a desire to understand the source of my canine companion's distress. Days turned into weeks as we immersed ourselves in research, unearthing forgotten legends and folklore intertwined with the land upon which my house stood. Stories of mystical creatures, nature spirits, and guardian entities emerged from the annals of time, painting a vivid tapestry of a realm that existed parallel to our own. Drawing upon this newfound wisdom, we began to piece together a narrative that transcended the boundaries of human comprehension. It appeared that the fallen tree had served as a guardian, a sentinel of protection standing watch over the realm of the supernatural. Its roots had delved deep into the earth, forming a connection with the hidden forces that dwelled there, safeguarding both the tangible and intangible. The sudden demise of the tree disrupted the delicate equilibrium that had existed for centuries. The blackened ivy, a symbolic manifestation of the severed connection, represented a rupture in the ethereal energy that once thrived harmoniously in this enchanted space. And my loyal canine, with her heightened sensitivity, had become a conduit, sensing the disarray and turmoil that had ensued. Armed with this newfound understanding, we embarked on a journey of restoration, seeking to reconcile the fragmented energy and restore balance to the land. Guided by ancient rituals and the guidance of spiritual practitioners, we engaged in an act of reverence and reverence, paying homage to the fallen guardian that had sacrificed itself for our protection. Slowly but surely, the energy began to shift. The ivy, once blackened and withered, regained a semblance of life, sprouting fresh green shoots that reached towards the heavens. It was as if the very essence of rejuvenation and vitality had breathed new life into the desolate foliage. The surrounding atmosphere seemed to lighten, shedding the weight of darkness that had lingered for far too long. Simultaneously, my canine companion underwent a remarkable transformation as well. As we ventured near the revitalized ivy and the stump, her demeanor shifted from fear and trepidation to one of cautious curiosity. Her tail, once firmly tucked between her legs, began to wag tentatively, reflecting a newfound sense of comfort and acceptance. With each passing day, the bond between my faithful companion and I deepened, as we explored the profound mysteries of the land that we called home. Together we discovered hidden pockets of enchantment, where whispers of forgotten tales and ancient spirits reverberated through the wind. My dog, once an epitome of fear and apprehension, became my guide, leading me to places where the veil between worlds thinned and the mystical energy pulsated with a mesmerizing intensity. As the seasons dance and transform, The legacy of the fallen tree evolved into something far greater than its physical presence ever could have conveyed. It became a symbol of resilience, teaching us to embrace the ebb and flow of life and its challenges, and to find solace in the interconnectedness of all things. Through the alchemy of time and shared experiences, my perception of the world expanded, no longer bound by the limitations of the ordinary. I reveled in the extraordinary, in fact, delving into the depths of my own intuition and connecting with the unseen realms that permeated our existence. The story of the fallen tree, the ivy, and the canine companion had woven itself intricately into the fabric of me. It had become a testament to the vast tapestry of life's mysteries and the remarkable ways in which the mundane and the mystical intertwine. And so as I reflect upon the transformative journey that began with a colossal tree's untimely demise, I am grateful for the unexpected detour it brought into my life. It opened my eyes to the wonders that lie just beyond the veil of the known, beckoning me to explore and to question and to embrace the beauty that surrounds us. In the end, it wasn't only the tree that fell, but also the barriers of perception, allowing me to perceive the world through the lens of wonder and infinite possibilities. The fallen tree had become a catalyst for growth, healing, and a profound understanding of the extraordinary forces that dance invisibly amidst the ordinary tapestry of life. And through this extraordinary journey, my faithful canine companion and I forged an unbreakable bond, forever intertwined as guardians of the ethereal realms that whisper their secrets to those who dare to listen. My dad's new house. During the early days of summer, a new chapter began for my family as my dad purchased a brand new house for us to move into. Upon our initial entry, it appeared to be an ordinary house from the 1800s, with an aged exterior that clearly needed some restoration. However, little did we know that our perception would soon be altered once we ventured into the basement. As I descended the creaky stairs, my gaze fixated on an intriguing blue door adorned with the inscription Wolfgang, and a star symbol crafted with lines reminiscent of the eerie markings found on the infamous Blair Witch Hunt. My curiosity piqued. I cautiously turned the doorknob, revealing a surprisingly petite room. It was so compact that I could extend my arms and touch every enclosed wall simultaneously. But before delving further into the mystery of this confined space, I feel compelled to explore other areas of the basement, so I did. To my right, I stumbled upon an empty room, save for a fleeting moment when I thought I saw a glimpse of someone standing there, staring at me with an unsettling intensity. It was as if they were conveying a foreboding message, a silent warning. Startled, I hastily recoiled, seeking solace in the presence of my father. Together we embarked on a more thorough investigation, only to discover that the room contained nothing more than a network of pipes intricately weaving their way through the space. Undeterred by this peculiar encounter, we continued our exploratory journey, uncovering a hidden chamber that required navigating through a labyrinth of twists and turns. At first glance, it appeared to be an ordinary room, but as I turned around, my eyes widened in astonishment. The entire expanse of one wall was adorned with a plethora of names, written in a language unknown to me. Amongst the sea of enigmatic text, 2 names stood out, both of which were ominously crossed out. Curiously enough, as I sit here now recounting this tale, I'm interrupted by a sudden crash emanating from the lower floors of this house. Alas, I'm the sole occupant at this moment, making it seemingly impossible for the source of the disturbance to be anything other than the mundane commotion of passing cars and trucks. Yet a tinge of unease lingers in the air, casting doubt on the true origin of the cacophonous event. Recalling another strange occurrence, I vividly remember a night when the shrill sound of a fire alarm shattered the stillness of my sleep, despite no signs of actual fire. What made this incident even more baffling was the fact that I had awoken just moments before the alarm's piercing wail, as if some subconscious instinct had nudged me awake in anticipation. As I attempted to drift back into slumber, the disconcerting sound persisted, persistently reverberating through the house. It was my desperate search for the source. I scoured every nook and cranny, only to find none of the alarms being triggered, until I opened the basement door. Instantly, the blaring intensified, echoing ominously from below. I promptly reached out to my father, seeking guidance, and through his technical prowess, he managed to silence the disquieting alarm remotely. A minor incident, perhaps, but one that left me unsettled, especially since I once heard a distinct sound of a pencil rolling across a surface, despite finding the very pencil in my room motionless and undisturbed. Once again, as if on cue, I find myself attuned to the sounds originating from the depths of the basement. A symphony of creaks and groans that could very well be attributed to the ancient heating system struggling to maintain its adequacy. I desperately hope that these noises can be attributed solely to the outdated infrastructure, reassuring myself that the arduous task of modernizing an old house inevitably comes with its fair share of quirks and inconveniences. In an attempt to distract myself from the uneasiness that had gradually seeped into my consciousness, I decided to immerse myself in the comforting realm of online entertainment, opting for some lighthearted YouTube stuff. But even amidst the flickering glow of the screen and the jovial banter of online personalities, I can't shake off the lingering sense of apprehension that settled deep within me. It feels as though there are 2 chapters remaining in this uncanny tale, a tale that has slowly woven its web of enigmas around me. The first of these unsettling incidents occurred just last night. As I lay in bed preparing to succumb to the embrace of slumber, something caught my attention. Startled, I sat up abruptly, my eyes fixated on a tall, ghostly figure gliding behind a dresser. In that momentary flash, I managed to convince myself that it was merely the white cord connecting the television swaying ever so slightly. However, as morning dawned and I mustered the courage to investigate further, I was confronted with a chilling revelation. The cord behind the dresser was in fact black, motionless, and entirely distinct from the ethereal presence I had witnessed. The inexplicable sight sent shivers down my spine, leaving me pondering the nature of this spectral apparition that had dared to invade the sanctity of my bedroom. Finally, there's one last peculiar aspect that has me gradually consuming my vision. A haunting presence that refuses to be ignored. It manifests itself within my peripheral sight, subtly encroaching upon my consciousness. Whenever I cast a sideways glance, I catch glimpses of 2 distinct entities observing me intently. One is the image of an unknown figure peering from behind corners, their eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that sends chills down my spine. The other manifestation takes the form of spectral cats, ethereal felines that wander through the house despite its complete lack of any living pets. They traverse the rooms with an otherworldly grace, their translucent forms both mesmerizing and unnerving. These unexplained visions and encounters intertwine, leaving me to question the true nature of the house I now call home. Are these mere coincidences, the result of an overactive imagination, or is there something far more sinister at play? Each strange occurrence gnaws at my psyche, amplifying the sense of foreboding that has settled upon me like an invisible shroud. As I sit here immersed in the cacophony of peculiar events that have unfolded since my family's arrival, I cannot help but feel an urgent need to uncover the secrets hidden within the walls of this aged abode. The blue door bearing the cryptic inscription, the whispered warnings from the empty room, the enigmatic wall of names, the inexplicable sounds and visions. These fragments of a puzzle demand to be pieced together, revealing a truth that may shake the very foundations of my understanding. And so, with an unyielding determination and a mix of trepidation and curiosity, I brace myself for the next chapter of this enigmatic journey. I venture forth, ready to confront the mysteries lurking within the recesses of this house. I hope to shed light on the inexplicable and find solace amidst the shadows that threaten to engulf me. We aren't sure what happened that night. I remember one night vividly, It was around 2 years ago when me and a friend of mine were playing video games in the early morning, something that we usually did up until this day. We were playing a video game called The Hunter, Call of the Wild. And we were just chilling and playing the game. As anyone familiar with this game knows, it's pretty silent up until the point where an animal makes a call sign or maybe makes a mating noise. On some occasions, you can get scared from elks making these mating sounds. But this particular night, it was around 4 in the morning, and we were at the peak of our game when we were playing it every single day. We were hunting for deer, silently waiting for them to pass by, when all of a sudden, I heard a loud screaming from a woman in my headphones, as if it was coming from my friend's house. At first, it scared the crap out of me because I wasn't expecting it, and immediately I asked, "Is everything okay?" My friend remained silent until I called his name. Then he said, "Wait, that wasn't you?" I answered, "No, I thought that was over at your house." He proceeded to describe the exact experience I had to me. For a moment, we remained silent, looking at each other inside the game, but no other noise or anything else happened. The incident left us both puzzled and scared. We kept wondering about what it could be, but we never found any explanation. We even checked the nearby houses to see if something terrible had happened, but everything was quiet and we couldn't find anything unusual. Since that night, I'd been trying to understand what happened. I've gone over the incident in my mind over and over again, but I can't seem to find any logical explanation. The fact that my friend experienced the same thing at the same time as I did only adds to the mystery. 2 weeks ago, I decided to ask him about that night again. I wanted to see if he had any new ideas or theories about what had happened. But he denied pulling a prank on me, and he seemed as puzzled as I was, so it seems we both had the same experience, even over time. We shared with our group of 5 friends, and no one could give us a logical explanation for what had happened. It remains a mystery to this day, and I often wonder if we'll ever get to know what it is that we experienced. Benevolent Spirit. As a 31-year-old man, I've experienced some strange occurrences throughout my younger life, starting from my earliest memories up until my college years at the age of 20. My grandparents lived in a beautiful house in a small town located in the mountains of North Carolina. They had hand-painted portraits of themselves hanging in their house, which they had commissioned before my grandfather's death. The portrait depicted my grandfather wearing a short-sleeved blue shirt with his glasses on, and it remained hanging in their house for decades after his passing. It's interesting to note that my grandfather passed away just 3 days before I was born, and was buried on the day of my birth. As a result, my middle name is his, even though I never got the chance to meet him. The strange occurrences began not long after I was born, and they continued for decades, even after I started college. Although I assume they still happen today, my grandmother's passed away for over 12 years now, and my uncle owns the house. To keep things brief, many members of my family have seen a man with big glasses, a blue shirt, and an old look walking up the front door of my grandmother's house. The description of the man is just like my grandfather's portrait, which had hung in their house for years. Almost everyone on my dad's side of the family has seen this man. He would walk up the driveway, past the windows of the front of the house, and disappear just before getting to the door. The figure is also spotted downstairs, either standing at the bottom of the steps or walking through one of the rooms down there. Even when the house was empty, while I was in college, I would see him walking into the kitchen. However, the figure always disappeared upon investigation. It was always brief glimpses of the figure, lasting a few seconds at most. There was no harm coming from the figure, and no one was ever frightened by it. The most memorable occurrence happened on the day my grandmother passed away. She was sick and wanted to pass away in her own house. She passed during the day, and for the first time, I saw the figure walking away from the house into the night. It was a surreal moment for me, and it gave me a sense of comfort, as if my grandfather was there to take my grandmother's hand and guide her into the afterlife. It's a mystery that nobody in my family has ever been able to explain, and even though we all have seen this figure, we've come to accept its presence in the house. It's a reminder that our loved ones who have passed away are still with us, watching over us, and guiding us in ways that we may never understand. Early Morning Encounter. Upon graduating high school, I decided to move in with a newly married couple, Rick and Carol. Rick and I had grown up on the same street, and I had met Carol during their junior year of dating. We became inseparable for about 5 years, with me being the third wheel. My friend had bought an older house in town since they were expecting their first child soon. It was a small 3-bedroom, 1.5-bathroom house with a quaint backyard. The situation was pretty ideal since they were all doing their best to cut expenditures and save money. Thus, I moved into the new house with them. As roommates, we talked about all sorts of things, from movies to food, and people knew and their likes and dislikes. During one of these conversations, Carol mentioned that she disliked taking baths because she never felt as clean as one would get from a shower. I happened to agree with her. However, 2 nights later, something happened that made me question her aversion to baths. It was just about dawn when I woke up needing to use the bathroom. Normally it takes an act of God to get me up from bed if I have to pee, but this day was different, and the urge was undeniable. As I opened the door to the shared main bathroom, I saw that the shower curtain on the tub had been pulled back about halfway, and Carol was taking a bath. I also heard the water running. What struck me as odd was that her head and face were facing toward me. That would mean that she would have had her head rest facing the faucet, which seems like an awkward place to place one's head, unless she was just rinsing her hair. I hurriedly excused myself with an apology, stating that I didn't know the bathroom was already occupied. I went back to my bed and sat for about 7 or 10 minutes, waiting for Carol to exit the bathroom. I wanted to use the 1/2 bath located adjoining the master bedroom because that would be awkward and potentially wake up Rick. After waiting for what seemed like eternity, and still not having heard Carol come out of the bathroom, I decided to just go in the backyard and relieve myself. The sunrise was probably just coming over the horizon at the time. It was pretty safe to assume that no neighbors were going to see me. I finished and went back to bed for another hour. After waking up, I went to the kitchen and saw Carol in the kitchen wearing a bathrobe and cooking breakfast. Rick had already left for work. After morning pleasantries, I jokingly said to her, "You got up pretty early this morning. And for not being much of a bath person, you sure took one long one this morning." She looked at me confused and replied, "What do you mean?" I responded, "Sorry I interrupted your bath this morning. I didn't mean to. I waited a while for you to get out, but I just couldn't hold it any longer and went out back. I didn't want to wake Rick up." She just stared at me, even more bewildered. I assured her that I didn't see her naked and that I only saw her face and hair above the water, and that the shower curtain had covered up the rest of her. I also told her that it must have been uncomfortable with her head resting on the faucet. She finally cracked a smile and said, "Come on, you're joking. I just got up. I haven't even showered yet." That's when I noticed that her hair was dry, and she even had a bit of a bedhead thing going on. After a few minutes of back and forth with her insisting that I was joking and me telling her I absolutely was not, we both were a bit speechless. Carol called Rick at work to confirm that he wasn't the one taking the bath that morning. We were both puzzled and didn't know what to make of it. I must have seen someone else taking a bath in that house, but who? The only other possibility was a ghost or some other paranormal entity, but I quickly dismissed that thought. I didn't believe in ghosts or anything supernatural, and I was sure that there must be a rational explanation for what it is that I saw. Despite my skepticism, I couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy about the whole incident. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something strange had happened. I decided to keep an eye out for anything unusual in the house, but for the first few days, everything seemed normal. Yet, one evening while we were all watching TV in the living room, we heard a strange noise coming from the hallway. It sounded like footsteps, but no one was there. We all looked at each other in confusion, but Rick quickly dismissed it as the house settling or maybe a mouse running around. However, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something just wasn't right. I started noticing other strange things happening around the house, doors opening and closing on their own, and strange noises at night, the objects moving by themselves. At first, I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks, but the more I observed, the more convinced I became that something paranormal was truly going on. I decided to investigate further and started doing some research on the history of the house. It turned out that the house was over 100 years old and had a long and colorful history. It had been owned by several families over the years, and some of the previous occupants had reportedly experienced strange and unexplainable occurrences in the house. I also found out that a young woman had died in the house many years ago under mysterious circumstances. Her death had been ruled accidental, but some people believed that foul play was involved. I couldn't help but wonder if she was the responsible one for the strange occurrences that were happening in my house. As the days went by, the paranormal activity in the house became more and more intense. I started hearing voices whispering in my ear. I felt someone touching me when no one was around. I couldn't take it anymore, and I decided to confront the spirit that was haunting the house. I did some research on how to communicate with ghosts and learned about a technique called EVP, or electronic voice phenomenon. I set up a recording device in the living room and started asking questions. To my surprise, I received answers in the form of ghostly whispers and moans. It was a chilling experience, but it also gave me some insight into what the ghost wanted. It turns out that the ghost was that of a young woman who had died in the house many years ago. She was angry and confused and wanted to know why she had died. I tried my best to communicate with her and provide her with some answers, but I knew that it was beyond my capabilities. In the end, we decided to call in a paranormal investigator to help us deal with the ghost. The investigator confirmed that there was a presence in the house, but he helped us perform a ritual to cleanse the house of negative energy. After the ritual, the paranormal activity in the house stopped completely, and we never experienced anything strange ever again. Looking back, it was an intense and unforgettable experience. I learned that there were things in this world that we can't explain, and that sometimes we have to seek help from others to deal with them. I also learned that it's important to keep an open mind and not dismiss things that we don't understand as mere superstition. I'm fairly certain my freshman dorm was haunted. As an individual who lived in a college dormitory during my freshman year, I had the opportunity to reside in a suite that consisted of 2 rooms that housed a total of 4 people with a shared bathroom. I shared the room with my roommates, and we all experienced strange events in our rooms, but most of the unusual happenings occurred in or near the bathroom. The designer of the bathroom had an unconventional idea of installing a motion sensor instead of a light switch in there. The sensor would turn off every night, minutes on the dot, which meant that showering often ended in darkness. The odd occurrences began to happen casually, halfway through the first semester, when the light in the bathroom would turn on by itself at night while no one was awake except for me. I eventually discovered that it was when the light turned itself on 3 times in a row, a total of 24 minutes, prompted me to check who was in there, but there was no one. After some time, the light turned itself on more frequently, earlier and earlier each day, until it randomly did at every given time. My roommates and I decided to address the entity responsible for the light at Casper, and began joking about asking him if he would like to join us for beverages from time to time. Secondly, the second semester rolled around, and the lights continued to wig out every now and then, eventually burning out. Interestingly, the serviceman who came to replace the bulbs mentioned that he had replaced them before the start of the school year. This struck a chord with me and my roommates, but it only made us interact with Casper more. We even set up a sheet for him to take at the poker table. One day, Casper decided he had a taste for coffee, and every 2 or 5 days around 2:30 or 3 p.m., my coffee maker would turn itself on and begin heating up. This was very odd since no one used it anyway. But this wasn't the holy shit moment for me. I was alone in the dorm, completely isolated from my roommates or suite mates. Scrolling on my phone while sitting on my bed, and out of nowhere I heard a loud, distinct clatter from the bathroom, and I knew instantly what it was. My roommates and I had bought a large trash bin and a lock on the lid that we cut a hole in for bottles and cans. We kept it in the bathroom, and when I walked in, the lights turned on and the lid of the bin was set perfectly in front of the can on its top. I was dumbfounded. The skeptic in me quickly tried to rationalize this and place the lid back on to see how easy it was to knock off. I could lift the whole bin over my head, just holding the lid, so it didn't just fall off. Then I tried settling it on top in case a roommate got lazy, probably knocking the lid off 24 times, but never did it land or even sound remotely like it had. There was no bounce when I heard it. Then I tried what I was hoping I wouldn't have to do. I took the lid and dropped it about a foot off the ground in front of the 3-foot bin. It landed and sounded exactly like it had when I originally heard it. I didn't stick around for another minute after that, and I went to the library until a roommate was there. Yes, I was willing to sacrifice them. Nothing that crazy ever escalated that much again, though the bathroom light still turned on and my coffee maker started up much less frequently. I'm still a bit of a skeptic, but this was enough to make me think otherwise. It was undoubtedly one of the most memorable experiences of my college life. Old Hotel had me feeling spooked. During my time working in Cheshire, England, I had to spend a night in a hotel with a couple of work colleagues. The hotel, the Crabwell Manor, apparently dates back to the 1600s, though I didn't know this at the time. Nevertheless, we liked the place for its size and location, and the pictures looked great, so we quickly booked our stay. Things were going smoothly until that fateful night when I kept feeling and seeing a tapping on my back, as if I was turned on my left side. At first I thought it was my workmate messing around, but when I turned around, he was fast asleep in a separate bed a few feet away from me. I didn't think much of it and I tried to go back to sleep, but the tapping continued after a couple of minutes. I turned around again, this time saying, "What?" But he was still asleep. It was then that I started to get a little bit freaked out. I knew that he couldn't tap me and return to a still position without me noticing. I lie there still, hoping to catch my workmate in the act. But when I felt the blanket start to tap against my back, I turned around almost instantly, only to see him fast asleep. I said even louder this time, "What?" But he didn't budge. In fact, he didn't move from the position he was in when I turned around previously. I was now getting seriously freaked out, but thankfully the tapping stopped and I eventually drifted off to sleep. The next thing I remember was feeling like someone was around me and wouldn't let me out of their sight. No matter how much I wanted to be released, I couldn't. I remember feeling distressed and I woke up sweating and panicked. It was a terrifying experience and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. When it was time to get up for work, I noticed that the tap in the bathroom was slightly turned and a small amount of water was leaking out. The door was also ajar, which it wasn't before we went to bed. I couldn't explain what had happened, but it was clear that something strange had occurred. After reading up on the history of the Crabwell Manor and learning about all the other disturbances, I believe that this experience should be looked into. I don't know if it was a paranormal experience or just my mind playing tricks on me, but it was enough to make me feel uneasy about staying in that hotel again. Crabwell Manor may have a rich history, but I'm not sure I want to experience any more of its ghostly past. Witch, Ghost, IT. When I was living alone in Bhopal, India, my parents were far away in Delhi, and I was studying in my bachelor's degree. I had a fascination with the paranormal and all things ghostly. My friend who lived across my flat also shared my interest. Together we would venture out in his motorcycle late at night around 12 a.m. or so, hoping to experience something paranormal. We had been going out for more than a week and hadn't experienced anything unusual, but that soon changed. One night we set out around 1 or 1:30 a.m., and as usual, I was driving my motorcycle and my friend was sitting behind me. The road we were on was desolate and ran along the boundary of a lake, with fencing all along it. On the right side of the road there was a pond, and about 200 or 300 meters down the road there was a right turn. It was a chilly night and there was a fog all around us, but there was a patch of around 100 or 150 meters that was clear fog. At the end of the clear path, there was a tree on the right side of the road next to the pond. It was clearly visible as there was no fog in that particular patch. Halfway through the patch, I saw someone sitting on one of the branches of a tree, and I stopped my bike. I was terrified and I told my friend to see it. As soon as I said it, someone jumped on the road. It had long hair and wearing dirty white clothes. It jumped on the road and started running toward the lake, which had a fence all around it. It went through the fence, and we could only hear the sound of water splashing. I drove my motorcycle as fast as I could and recited prayers. When we crossed the place where it had jumped into the lake, we could see that it was properly fenced without any gaps, or certainly not gaps big enough in which a person could pass through. I asked my friend what he saw, and if he saw what I saw, and he said he saw someone jump and could only hear the water splashing. From that day onwards, we stopped going on such rides. I still believe that we saw a witch that night. The memory still sends shivers down my spine, and I'm not sure if I'd ever want to experience anything like that ever again. Potential haunting? As a resident of Savannah, I've always been aware of the city's reputation for being haunted. I live in a split-level house built in 1900, along with 2 roommates and a cat. I moved in here just over a year ago, in January 2020, and everything had been perfectly normal until recently. About a month ago, I began to notice that the cabinets in the kitchen were frequently left open. I would shut them only to find them open again later in the day. It was strange because my roommates had never done this before, but they just brushed it off when I asked them about it. I began to get a little bit uneasy. Around the same time, our usual docile cat started acting strange. She was constantly meowing at nothing and seemed skittish and nervous. She would run away from me and pounce on nothing. It was weird because she had never acted this way before. Even my roommate noticed the change in her behavior. Then my lamp in my room started turning on and off on its own. It was touch activated, and I had tried changing the light bulb and plugging it into different outlets, but it kept happening. I knew there must be a logical explanation, but it still made me uneasy. Things only got weirder from there. One night, I had a nightmare that left me feeling incredibly anxious and scared. When I mentioned it to my roommate, she revealed that she had experienced the exact same thing on the same night. We were both completely freaked out, but the scariest experience happened just recently. One night after my roommate had gone to bed, I heard a loud noise coming from the downstairs foyer. I tried to brush it off as the house settling, but then I heard my doorknob rattling as if someone was trying to come into my room. I was so scared that I locked my door and texted my roommate and asked if she tried to come in. She said no and that it was probably just the cat. But I knew what I had heard, and I felt like someone had tried to break into my room. I'm not sure what's happening in this house, but I can't really shake that feeling that something was just off. The combination of open cabinets, our cat's strange behavior, and the lamp, the nightmare, and the attempted break-in is all too unsettling. And I'm not sure how much longer I can live in this house without feeling constantly on edge. My first unexplained experience. It was summertime and I was excited to hang out with my friends and swim at the river just like every day in the summer. However, my sister got invited to a sleepover at her friend's house, which my parents agreed to. I thought it was only fair that I got to have a sleepover too, so I warily called my mom to ask her, knowing that she wasn't the biggest fan of people coming over to that house at the last minute, but she surprisingly agreed. As soon as my friend and I arrived at my house, we went straight to the bedroom and started to get ready while my parents were making dinner. That's when we saw him. A stranger was standing in my doorway, dressed in white, a wife-beater tank top and baggy jeans that didn't fit. He had a scary demeanor with yellow teeth, a creepy smile, and greasy hair. He was what I would call the epitome of white trash. My friend and I were terrified and screamed when we saw him. The man just laughed and turned around and walked away. I followed him. He walked down the hallway and turned the corner, which led right toward the kitchen where my parents were cooking dinner. I turned the corner just a moment after him and he was gone. My parents were asking why we were screaming and I explained everything. My dad, being protective, went to go check the house. This was so strange because there was no way that this man could have gotten past my parents to get out of the house. And my protective dogs didn't even sense something was in the house. My dad checked the whole house and even the perimeter of the outside, but there was no trace of anything. To this day, I still don't know what to make of it. I think it was probably a spirit, but I really have no idea. The unexplainable experience still sticks with me and everyone who remembers it. Death Knocks Experience. TW:suicide. A few years back, my family decided to celebrate my then boyfriend's birthday by taking him to the mortuary in New Orleans to do an escape room. I've always been sensitive to spirits, and I was hesitant about going there because the mortuary used to be a morgue and it's surrounded by cemeteries. However, my love for the creepy stuff made me go anyway. Surprisingly, I didn't feel any eerie vibes while I was in there, and we had a lot of fun. After we returned home, things started to get weird. I began to feel like someone was watching me when I was home, and one time I was taking a bath and decided to pull up the front camera on my phone when I saw something behind me that quickly ran out of view. Although I turned around instantly, there was nothing there. Another night I woke up because I could hear music playing, but I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. However, the most unusual incident occurred a few days later, and it still has me shaken up. One night at around 2 or 3 a.m., I suddenly shot up straight in bed out of a dead sleep, feeling extremely anxious. I couldn't remember if I had a nightmare or not, or why I even woke up. Suddenly I heard 3 loud bangs on our front door. My first thought was that someone was breaking in. We lived in the hood at the time, and it wasn't uncommon. Without wasting any time, I ran to the front door. The porch light was on. I walked up to the glass to peer out, but I saw no one. However, the hair on the back of my neck stood up and I felt like someone was right behind me. I turned around and to my surprise, there was no one. I was so creeped out that I texted my divorced, estranged parents in a group chat, begging them to come over. In the end, I made my roommate let me sleep in her room. However, a few weeks later, my aunt passed away unexpectedly from suicide. Whether the knocks on the door and her death coincided, I guess I'll never know, but I often wonder about it. Old primary school in Longsight, Manchester. When I was working as a music teacher at a primary school in Manchester a few years ago, I had a paranormal experience that left me quite shaken. The building where the school was located was quite old, and I had heard that it was used as a hospital during World War II, although I wasn't sure how true that was. I've always believed in the paranormal, having witnessed many strange things while growing up in my parents' house. However, despite the rumors about the school's history, I never felt or sensed anything unusual in the building, at least not until the incident I'm about to describe. To avoid traffic, I used to leave my house at around 5:45 and arrive at my school by 6:30 a.m. I was usually the first person to arrive, apart from the cleaners, and it was usually dark in the morning, but I never felt scared or sensed anything out of the ordinary. My music equipment room was located in the basement, down 2 flights of stairs. The basement was pitch black, so I had to switch on the lights before going down. At the bottom of the stairs, there was an old toilet room to the left that was mostly used for storage. To the right, there was a small corridor leading to my room halfway down, and an art store room at the end. In the mornings, I used to go down to my room and play the drums before getting my equipment for the first lesson. I never heard or saw anything strange during that time. However, one lunchtime, when I was in the music room and needed to use the toilet, I heard high-heeled shoes walking down the stairs. I was washing my hands when I saw a woman with her hair in a bun, wearing a 2-piece tweed-type jacket and skirt, walking toward my room. I thought she was the deputy head and went to see what she wanted. When I got to my room, there was no one there. I looked around, but no one was in sight. I thought the woman might have gone to the art room, so I walked down the short distance to check, but again, nobody was there. I felt a little scared and went upstairs to the deputy head's office. I asked her if she'd been down to the basement, but she had not, and she certainly was not wearing a tweed jacket or had her hair in a bun. Feeling a bit spooked, I went to the staff room and told a colleague and friend, and thought maybe I had seen a ghost. I described what I had seen, and my friend told me to go tell a specific member of staff. This teacher immediately asked me if the woman was wearing a two-piece tweed jacket and a skirt and had her hair up in a bun. I was shocked when she said that she had seen her on several occasions. That he had seen her on several occasions on the second floor hall outside his classroom when he was working late. The caretaker and some of the cleaners had also reported seeing her. After that incident, it took me a while to venture down to the basement in the mornings to play the drums. I've had many other paranormal experiences at my parents' and friends' houses, but this was the only time I saw a full apparition to date. It still gives me chills when I think about it. Strange figures at the zoo. As I make my way through the zoo early in the morning, I watch as one of the keepers replaces the feeding stations for the birds. Suddenly he stops and looks around, listening intently. I can see the concern on his face as he mentions that he hears something strange, like some sort of socializing, but unlike anything that he'd ever heard before. Having worked here for ages and raised many of these birds, he knows them very well and can accurately determine the source of the sounds. He realizes that the calls are coming from the top of an artificial rock structure, where some equipment and controls for the building are hidden. None of the birds go up there because they're afraid of the motor for the waterfall. When he investigates, he finds nothing. Multiple night guards have reported similar experiences in the area, with two of them even seeing tall figures standing up there. One guard recalls sitting just outside and hearing the strange sound, thinking that one of the birds was hurt. Upon entering, he could hear light footsteps on top of the rock structure, slowly stepping out with his taser. He looked up and saw a figure, possibly around 6 feet tall with a hunched posture, peering over an aviary and looking around. The figure didn't seem to notice him, but he left and called the police. They searched the entire zoo but found nothing. The second guard had a similar experience, except this time there were two figures who threw a rock at her. She couldn't find the object that they had tossed at her, but she knew that it had come from up there. Unfortunately, the zoo has yet to set up any cameras in the building, much of the frustration of the staff, for reasons other than the paranormal. However, one of the outdoor cameras did manage to capture the sound once when it was particularly loud. The administration is finally taking notice of these encounters, as they've become so common in the off-season. Even our own CEO has heard the sounds. Recently, staff and guests have reported several incidents of objects being thrown at them, and one of the birds was found dead, as if it had been squeezed to death. It was especially heartbreaking since the bird was such a beloved and well-known creature. Although there are many more stories, it would take me forever to include them all. And I too had experiences with the strange occurrences in the aviary. The first time I heard the vocalization, which was unlike anything I'd heard before, it was loud and unsettling. All the birds went dead silent when the ground birds hid. It was especially unnerving since they aren't usually afraid of loud sounds. The second time was even more intriguing. As I walked through the area, I noticed that the section of net had separated the iguana from the birds was being stretched up and onto the top of the rock structure and into the foliage. It looked as if someone was trying to rip off the top of the enclosure. I called out asking who was up there, but there was no response. When I radioed security and waited for them to arrive, the net sprung back and there was no sound. We searched the area, but there was no sign of anyone. The iguana was a bit stressed, but seemed unharmed. As I write this, the incidents are ongoing. Today I walked through the aviary and heard another call. Suddenly I had to stop typing as someone shoved a metal shelf off the top of the rock structure. It's clear that something is happening in there, and whatever it is, it's very active. I don't know what else to say. I want to say it's a poltergeist, but it's so vocal and active. The shadowy figures that have been seen multiple times have left many of us on edge. There's a sense of unease that permeates the entire zoo, especially at night. I've heard stories of strange occurrences happening in other parts of the zoo as well, but nothing as consistent as what's been happening in the Avery building. One of the security guards told me that he saw one of the shadow figures move from one spot to another with a kind of jerky, unnatural motion. He said it reminded him of stop-motion animation. Another guard said that he saw the figures moving away and suggested that they weren't entirely solid, almost as if they were made of smoke or mist. I started to notice that some of the birds in the aviary seemed to be acting strangely as well. They'll suddenly become agitated for no apparent reason, flapping their wings and screeching. It's like they're reacting to something that we can't see. I've been working at that zoo for years, and I've never experienced anything like this. It's hard to feel like we're not being watched, or that there's something malevolent lurking in the shadows. Even during the day when the aviary is filled with natural light, there's a feeling of darkness that hangs over everything. I've talked to some of the other staff members, and everyone seems to have their own theory about what's going on. Some people think it's a ghost, others think it's a poltergeist, and some believe it's some kind of interdimensional being that's crossed over into our world. Personally, I'm not sure what to believe. All I know is that there's something very strange happening in the aviary building, and it's starting to affect everyone who works at the zoo. The fact that these occurrences have been going on for so long without any explanation or resolution is starting to take a toll on all of us. I do hope that the administration will take this seriously and bring in some experts to investigate. We need answers, and we need them soon. Until then, I'll be keeping a close eye on the aviary and listening for any more strange sounds or sightings. Who knows what we might find if we keep digging deeper into this mystery. Let my child sleep. As a child, I always looked forward to hearing my nanny, my mother's mother, telling me the story that had been passed down to her by generations. It was a long story, so I'd always settle in for a good night's worth of listening. The tale was set in medieval times when kingdoms still existed in India, and infamous gangs of thugs known as dacoits and/or bandits roamed the land, robbing innocent travelers on isolated roads and often killing them. The story takes place in the kingdom of Marathas, now known as Maharashtra state in India, where the people were frustrated by one particularly notorious gang of dacoits consisting of 5 or 6 members. One day, the dacoits had a big loot and decided to take refuge in an old house called the Wada. The Wada was an old house structure mainly popular in the Maratha community, situated slightly out of an abandoned village in the middle of a jungle. The area was avoided by many other villagers due to the haunting stories, making it the perfect hideout for the dacoits to pass the night. It was not just an ordinary night. It was Amavasya, a new moon night. It said that India, the most paranormal activities, enhance on this day. On top of that, it was raining, a deep dark night. The dacoits were happy and celebrating their victory. Some of them were even drinking in one of the inner rooms of the Wada, with one single oil lamp for light. As the night was slowly passing by, during their conversations, laughing and arguments, some of them started hearing a very low and strange voice of a lady singing. The song was something like Lori, an Indian lullaby which mothers sing, but they ignored it, thinking that they were just hallucinating due to alcohol, or it was just the raindrops, or simply night creatures making weird noises. They continued their talking, but after a while the voice of the song became prominent, and even the one who didn't drink started hearing the voice. 2 of the dacoits went back to check the house with a hunch that something might be spying on them, but they found nothing. At last, all of them came to the conclusion that they were just hallucinating and started their own party again. The celebration slowly started to grow into an argument as to who would keep what, and greed started playing its part. The argument started to turn into conflict, and the voices of them arguing started to break the eerie, deep, silent night when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a loud noise of a small baby crying came from the deep, dark room around the corner. All the dacoits, who almost drew their weapons to fight, froze, staring hard at each other, shaking with fear. One of the gang members indicated their leader and looked into his eyes of what to do. The leader, a man in his 50s, a hardcore criminal with nothing to fear, not knowing of the situation he was facing, snapped out of it and shouted angrily, "Who's there? Come out or we'll have to come over there and kill you and drink your blood." For a moment, all the dacoits holding their weapons stared hard to see if they could find something in that room and got some courage because of their leader's words. The 2 of them who had checked the Wada earlier and had happened to miss out on that one single room looked at each other and decided to check the room from which the voice came. But as soon as they took 1 or 2 steps towards it, the cry of the little child started again, this time more prominent and striking. All of a sudden, in an angry, loud voice of a lady came from that room. "How dare you wake my child up? Don't you see my child is trying to sleep? Get out of my wada!" It was at this moment that all of them realized that they had disturbed something more sinister, something which could not be killed with their mere weapons. All of them went into flight mode and started running whichever direction they could. One of them died on the spot due to shock. All of them started shouting loudly in panic. "Help Mother Kali," an Indian goddess. "Help, help, help us." The cry was the same as their victims during the loots, as if karma came to bite them back. All of them ran in different directions due to panic and lost their way to exit the wada. With no lamps to navigate or any source of light whatsoever, a simple big old rusty house became a maze for them. But somehow they managed to escape. One of them, who knew the nearby village, somehow managed to reach there. Coincidentally, a unit of soldiers who were tracking down the dacoits was in the same village. They caught him immediately. Or rather, this terrifying thug, who was wounded all over due to cuts and bruises because of running into the jungle crazily, surrendered immediately. Shaking with fear, the dacoits told all the incidents to the soldiers. Although it was a good opportunity for the soldiers to track and catch them all by night, they decided not to do so as they were scared too. No one had the courage to go into that wada, so they decided to visit it when the sun rose. The villagers who were listening to the dacoits starting chanting and mantras and praying to the gods, one of the villagers who was known for his bravery and had a strong belief in the power of gods, decided to go to that wada at night and find out the truth behind the story. He knew the jungle very well, and he also knew that there were some secret paths that led to that wada. So he started his journey toward the wada, and when he reached there, he saw that the wada was very old and had a very eerie feeling to it. He gathered all his courage and went inside. He saw that there was no one there, but he could still hear the voice of a lady singing a lullaby. He followed the sound of the singing and reached a room. When he entered the room, he saw that there was a woman sitting there, singing a lullaby to her child. The woman looked at him, and her eyes were very scary. He could feel that there was something very strange about her. She asked him, "Who are you, and what do you want?" He replied, "I am a villager, and I want to know what happened here last night." The woman replied, "Last night, some dacoits came here and disturbed my child's sleep. I warned them to leave, but they did not listen. They tried to take away our belongings, and in the process, they killed my child. I cursed them, and they will suffer for their sins. They will never be able to rest in peace." The villager realized that the woman was a ghost, and he knew that he had to leave the wada as soon as possible. He quickly left the wada and went back to the village. He told the soldiers and the villagers about what he had seen and heard. From that day onward, nobody went near that wada, as if they knew it was haunted by the ghost of a woman and her child. The dacoits who disturbed their peace were never caught, and it's said that they're cursed by the ghost. The cursed family trembled with fear as they heard the ghost's voice echo through the dark hallway. Suddenly the lights flickered and went out, leaving them in complete darkness. They huddled together, praying for the nightmare to end. Just then, a faint light appeared at the end of the hallway. It grew brighter and brighter until they could see the outline of a figure. It was an old man dressed in tattered clothing, holding a lantern. The family looked at each other in confusion. Was this the ghost that they had heard about? The old man approached them, his voice raspy and weak. "Leave this place," he whispered, "before it's too late." The family hesitated for a moment, but then the old man vanished into thin air, leaving only his lantern behind. They knew they had to leave immediately. As they made their way to the exit, they heard strange noises coming from all around them. Doors slammed shut. Footsteps echoed. And whispers filled the air. Finally, they burst through the front door and into the night. As they looked back at the old mansion, they could see a faint outline of the old man in the window watching them leave. They never spoke of the incident again, but they knew that they had narrowly escaped the curse of the ghostly old man. Either I'm being haunted, or it's proximity. 2 years ago, I made the decision to move out of my old place and into a new house in the same town. The house I moved into was around 50 years old, and while it had some charm, it definitely needed some work. So I spent some time rebuilding parts of the house to make it more modern and functional. However, I never thought to ask the previous owners, who were still alive, to ask permission to make any of these changes. One unique feature of the house was that it was only one floor, so you could hear pretty much everything from any point in the house as long as it was mildly loud. Another interesting aspect of the house was that it was located on the outskirts of town, with the local graveyard just 300 meters away in a straight line from the house. While the graveyard was always in view, it never really bothered me or anyone else who lived there. A few months after moving in, I started seeing shadows in the corner of the house. At first, I didn't think too much of it, since I'd always seen shadows in my previous home. However, my mom and I started hearing sounds coming from the attic, a small space where all the cables and water heater and AC, all those installations were located there. We tried to blame it on rats or bats, since we had found animals in there before. But then things started to get a little bit weirder. One day I was sitting on my computer with my dog sleeping on my bed, and my mom was watching TV in the living room. Suddenly I heard a couple of knocks on the front door, and my dog started barking. My mom was surprised since she hadn't heard anything at all. This scared me because I had heard it so clearly, and my dog had reacted too. I couldn't be imagining things. So over the next few days I was alone at home on 3 separate occasions. On the first one, my dog was sleeping in my bed again when I heard a strange screeching noise coming from inside the house. I panicked and quickly got up, turning on all the lights in the living room and the fireplace. The second time, my dog was in the living room on her own bed when I heard the noise again, but this time it seemed like it was trying to say my name. I freaked out and I started talking back, asking it to come face to face with me, but there was no response. The last time, it was just the primitive noise again, and I didn't react. My dog didn't seem to hear anything or react in any way. The most recent incident occurred just last week. My mom and I were both home with my dog outside. We heard a loud, malicious bang on the door, as if someone were angrily trying to get in. My mom looked at me, and I got up to check, but as expected, there was no one there. My dog was just sleeping in her bed outside. Despite all these strange occurrences, we haven't done anything to try to get rid of whatever might be in our house. We haven't tried any sort of cleaning, nor have we contacted a priest, as neither of us are Catholic. We both believe that there is something else in the house, possibly one or more spirits that have come to visit us. It's possible that these spirits have followed me from my previous home, or were already in the house before we moved in, as it was inhabited for some years before we got there. What worries me the most is that it might be attached to me in some way, since it said my name once, and nothing happened at my previous home when I wasn't there. Was I saved by Hermes? When I was just 12, I experienced something that would change my life forever. It happened in my home country, Guyana, which at the time was plagued by poverty and violence. Small villages like mine were often targeted by gangs and bandits looking for money and resources and gold. Unfortunately, my village was located near the outskirts of Georgetown, making it an easy target for these criminals. On that fateful day, things quickly spiraled out of control. The village leaders refused to give in to the demands of the gang, and as a result, they began shooting up the village. Innocent people lost their lives, and I could have been one of them myself. My family and I heard the first shots and immediately decided to flee. However, in the chaos, we got separated from each other, and I found myself running for my life with a group of adults, one of whom happened to be the village leader who initiated the argument with the bandits. As we ran, I watched in horror as people fell on either side of me. It was the longest I had ever run at full speed, and as a child with chronic asthma, I thought my body would give out at any moment. However, I was determined to survive. Suddenly, the sun became incredibly bright to the point that I could barely see. I panicked, thinking that I was about to collapse. That's when I saw a man running at my side, wearing a golden half helmet, metal boots that went up to his knees, and a white and gold leather vest. He had an intense glow that emanated confidence, and I felt safe and powerful in his presence. As we ran, he looked at me and smiled, saying, "Just keep running, we're almost there and you're doing great." I couldn't believe it. Who was this man who appeared out of nowhere to help me? Suddenly I heard a shot very close behind me, and he gently pushed my arm. The next thing I knew, I blacked out. When I woke up, I was in Georgetown General Hospital, and everybody kept asking me how I managed to make it there all by myself. I had no logical answer because I didn't remember anything after the man pushed my arm. It was a mystery that haunted me for years. After my family and I moved to the United States, I became interested in the mythology, especially Greek and Norse mythology. One day as I was reading about Hermes, the messenger of the gods, I saw depictions of him in books that looked strikingly similar to the man who had helped me on that day. I couldn't believe it. Was it possible that I had been aided by a deity? The idea sent shivers down my spine. Years have passed since that day, and I still think about it often, especially because I've taken up running competitively. I want to represent my Guyana in the Olympics for track. I can't help but wonder if it wasn't Hermes who helped me that day, then who was it? The mystery continues to fascinate and inspire me.